Greta Johnson. I am the state representative for Ohio's 35th House District that represents the southern part of Akron and all of Barberton. I am joined today by co-sponsor Representative Nicholas Celebrezzi. I am also joined by Executive Director of the Ohio Alliance to End Sexual Violence, Katie Piana, and the Executive Director of the Ohio Domestic Violence Network, Nancy Madeline. Thank you all for being here today and standing with me. The tagline that was put out for this press conference is equal justice. But the first step to equal justice is access to justice. And right now we live in a state where certain offenses of rape and all offenses of battery are not considered crimes if they're committed against a spouse. As a prosecutor, one of the elements I had to prove in some rape and all sexual battery cases was that the victim and the offender were not married. And inevitably, I would always find myself thinking, but what if they were? Would it make the date rape drug slipped into a drink more tolerable? Would it make the 20-year-old passed out less of a victim if it had been her spouse violating her? It is time to move Ohio out of the dark ages. Rape is real. Sexual battery happens. I refuse to stand by with this platform that I have and not challenge this law that only adds to the mountain of reasons victims need to overcome to report their sexual assault. As we move toward the legislation of creating marriage equality for all couples, we must also address the fact that marriage needs to be a safe place for all couples. And as we work in this House toward our Speaker's goal of empowering women, we must ensure their safety. We can help by creating access to justice for all victims. The legislation that Representative Fetter and I will introduce today will eliminate the marital spousal language in rape and sexual battery and will completely eliminate the statute of limitations for rape and sexual battery. I will not stand by with a two-tier justice system for victims. House Bill 6 and Senate Bill 13 were a good start, but they are not the finish. I am not done, and I will continue to work to make sure that every victim of every sexual battery and rape has the ability and the access to justice they rightly deserve. I'm going to turn the floor over to Executive Director Katie Piana.
Thank you, Representative Johnson. I also want to thank Representative Fetter and other representatives for your leadership and your commitment to supporting survivors. I also want to thank the General Assembly, which has supported progress in both House Bill 6 and Senate Bill 13, which would address extending the statute of limitations through a DNA extension, which is a significant first step and would align Ohio with over 27 other states to address the immediacy of untested kits that are finally being tested after decades. And this is in part to the Attorney General Mike DeWine's sexual assault kit testing initiative, as well as Senator Cafaro's work to pass Senate Bill 316 last year, which now requires that all kits, past and present, are submitted and tested. The Ohio Alliance to End Sexual Violence, a coalition representing rape crisis centers across Ohio, bringing the voices and perspectives of survivors to the State House, believes that survivors deserve access to justice, no matter how long it takes. We have heard from survivors, immediately after the assault to decades later. The impact of rape extends far beyond Ohio's current statute of limitations. 8 states do not have any statute of limitations at all for prosecuting felony sexual assault. In northern Ohio, a man was indicted last year on several counts of rape from nearly 2 decades ago. This case falls within the current statute of limitation. This case does not involve DNA evidence. However, it does involve videotape evidence of the crimes, which was recently found. DNA is one form of evidence, but not the only kind. Common arguments against eliminating statute of limitations include that there are too many logistical and evidentiary challenges in investigating and prosecuting rape so long after the fact. We've also heard from people their concerns about it's not judicious for defendants to be subjected to prosecution for rape so long after the fact, and that people view that it's unreasonable to equate the statute of limitations with rape and murder. It is true that rape can often be difficult to investigate and prove in our judicial system, but just because it's difficult doesn't mean we shouldn't try. No one is suggesting that the standard for conviction should change. If a rape cannot be proven beyond reasonable doubt, whether it's 6 months or 20 years or 40 years after the fact, then there would not be conviction. Just as in murder cases, evidence in rape cases can be discovered or become available over time. Eliminating the statute of limitations for rape gives prosecutors more tools to keep our communities safer. and survivors of rape deserve access to justice, no matter how long it takes. We must also remember the Jerry Sandusky case in Pennsylvania. Most kids who are sexually abused know their abusers, and approximately 40% of sexually abused children are victimized by family members. As we see in cases involving perpetrators who are in positions of authority and of trust, like Sandusky, there are significant barriers to reporting. Sandusky was convicted of sexually abusing 10 boys, yet 26 men came forward reporting sexual abuse. Serial sex offenders have many victims, and the abuse often spans many years. There are obvious reasons victims do not come forward to report, yet when others do, and when time has passed, it may be safe for others to come forward and report against a trusted community member. Yet if the statute of limitations has run out, where is the justice? In addition to the critically important work currently being done to extend the statute of limitations when there is DNA evidence, let's also eliminate the statute of limitations entirely, so that all victims and our communities have access to justice and safety, no matter how long it takes. Thank you, Representative Johnson.
Thank you, Katie, for pointing out so many of the very important reasons why it's important to not just extend the statute of limitations for rape for all victims, but to eliminate it entirely. As a prosecutor, I worked mainly on special victims crimes toward the end of my decade-long prosecutorial career. And there is only one way to describe rape. It is the only thing that was the common thread of all of those cases. And it is the murder of the soul. It is something that every victim defines their life in as everything that happened before and everything that happens after. 5 years is not enough. It is time. And I have heard from both sides of the aisle that the time has come. It is time to lift the statute of limitations. It is time to bring these victims out of the dark. It is time to bring Ohio into the light by removing the marital language from rape and sexual battery. This bill that Representative Feder and I are introducing is a constitutional solution to an unconscionable problem, and I will be calling on all of my colleagues on both sides of the aisle to support it. Thank you for your time today. If there are any questions,